At $200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES.
Only on Super NES.
You're listening to the SNES Podcast with your host, Soulblazer.
Hello, everybody. This is Super NES Podcast, episode number 234. I am Greg, as always, joined by Joe.
Hello.
And this time we're looking at a game that Joe had suggested, but I'm sure it's a game that we were going to get around to eventually sooner or later because I've always heard the good things about it. We're taking a look at Sparkster on Super NES, a Konami game which is connected to but not directly associated with the other Sparkster, the Rocket Knight games that Konami did on Genesis. We'll get into that here in like a little bit. So. Anyway, Joe, what was your motivation for wanting to cover this game and to play this game before the podcast?
So I own the original Rocket Knight Adventures for the Genesis. It was definitely a game that I enjoyed, and I knew that there was a Super NES game. But it's one of those, like, I've always seen it from afar. I maybe see, like, quick little essays on YouTube for, like, a few minutes. But no one ever really goes in-depth. And it's just one of those, I've looked at it. It's a franchise I know. And I was like, I want to play it. And I figured, if there's something I want to play, I gotta suggest it here on the podcast. Because then it puts the fire under my butt. And I have to do it. So I've been putting this off for quite a while. And finally, we're going to do it. So here we are.
Yeah, that's a good way of describing it. So, So I played a little bit about this Sparkster. I actually played Sparkster Rocket Knight Adventures 2 on Genesis first several years ago.
Oh, okay.
Then played then checked out Rocket Knight Adventures to play a little bit with this game as well too, so I could give some comparison about it. But we should go into a little bit of history and detail here about the franchise for listeners may not be aware of it. This was a franchise of 4 games put out by Konami, the very famous, infamous video game developer who always made great games during this time period. So the original game in the franchise was Rocket Knight Adventures, as Joe just mentioned. That was a Genesis game from 1993. So later game definitely shows off the Genesis powered hardware, I think. Yeah. It's basically a platform game, but it's kind of like a goofy, whimsical take on a platform game where you're playing like an opossum knight who has to defeat evil dogs and forms like that to save his planet. So definitely very quirky gameplay, but good music, good graphics. Definitely designed by somebody who also had experience designing the Contra games. So, definitely some good pedigree. And the game sold very well and it's still very highly thought of today. So, of course, they wanted to make a sequel, and so about a year later, 1994, Sparkster Rocket Knight Adventures 2 came out for Genesis as well. Didn't really deviate for the first game all that much, which is one reason the game didn't sell or review as well as the first game did. But it's pretty much the case, more of the same. If you like Sparkster, these names are confusing. I'm going to be doing that a lot. If you like the first game, you're going to like this one as well too. So, but then. So Konami wanted to put the game onto the Super NES, I'm sure, because it's Super NES was also a major platform. Konami was one of the few companies big enough at the time to be able to have separate development teams work differently on both consoles. So and so they made the decision. I never could find out exactly why they made the decision. Like all I could find guesses. They made the decision to not port a game over to Super NES, but instead make a entirely new game of the franchise, where it's like it was not a direct sequel to the first game like Rocket Knight Adventures 2 was, but just inspired by the first game, and definitely plays kind of like a mix between the first two games. So, and to make matters, and like I said, the naming scheme of these games is kind of confusing, because like the first game is called Rocket Knight Adventures, the sequel Genesis is called Rocket Knight Adventures 2 Sparkster, and then the one of the Super NES by itself is just called Sparkster. So definitely some confusion here with the names, but again, I'm not sure why Konami did that. But in any case, the two games came out almost. Two games came out almost at almost the same time. In Japan, they released only about a week apart. Rocket Knight Adventures 2 came out September 23rd, 1994, and like Sparkster of Super NES came out September 15th. So. They came out. The game also came out in North America the following month, and Europe the month after that. So the guesses I saw as to why Konami did this was the fact that Konami, even though Konami probably had very high standards at the time, and they felt that even though they could very easily port the game over to Super NES, but porting a game, no matter how you do it, does not take advantage of that system's strengths advantages of what you're porting it over to. So, whereas by comparison, building a game from the ground up does allow you to take advantage of the system's strengths and mitigate its weaknesses, which I thought Konami did a great job of this game. We'll get into the actual gameplay here in a little bit, but it's still an interesting choice as to why they did it. They did that way. A lot of people are upset. They are upset that they did it at the time, at least. I don't think anybody cares now. But at the time the games came out, a lot of people were upset that Konami just didn't port over Rocket Knight Adventures 2. But anyway, whatever the reason for it, that's what Konami did. And then the franchise was dead for a long time, and then all of a sudden in 2010, a new game came out called Rocket Knight, which came out for all the systems at the time, Xbox 360, PS3, and Windows. So, 2.5 platforming game. It did all right. It didn't get the attention or the press the original games the franchise did, but I didn't see a so I've not played that one myself. I didn't see any actual hate on the game. It was just like, it's good. It's good. If it just wasn't as good as the original games, seemed to be the popular consensus.
Yeah. So I actually bought that game for the PS3. How's the best way to say this? They updated the graphics, so I mean, of course, it's gorgeous. But in doing so, it looked so modern that it kind of took the nostalgic feel out of it. That's one way to look at it. The other thing is they went like, it should be Nintendo hard because it's a retro title. And there are points in that game where you will pull your hair out. I personally still have not beaten that game, nor do I plan on going back to try to beat that game. So it was nice. It's beautiful looking. I actually didn't mind the changes that they made. But yeah, it's hard, really hard. And that is a theme in the Rocket Knight Adventure games.
I was going to say, yes.
1 and 2 were quite challenging. Here, Sparkster is quite challenging. So it wasn't a huge surprise, but you would think that, with the way most modern games are, they kind of make them a little more accessible, and they just kind of didn't do that here. So
yeah. Well, last year, much of everybody's surprised, I'm sure. Limited Night Games. The limited run of games, and actually we're going to do a re-release of the first 3 games for Modern Collection because currently there's no way to play these games emulated. Right. The games are not for sale. So as we're recording this podcast, next month on June 11th, Rocket Knight Adventures Resparked comes out on the Switch in digital format. It will have the first 3 games of the series, Rocket Knight Adventures 2, and Sparksters with two new. They're also adding two new non-gameplay modes: a museum, a music player, a boss rush mode, save states, and also a rewind feature. So it should be pretty good to be able to play these games in a modern format with some of the some extra bells and whistles that people kind of expect like a modern game these days.
Yeah.
So and fairly cheap too, $26 for like how much it's selling it for. So seems like a pretty good deal.
Yeah, for the 3 games, that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah. So, and there's going to be and they also showed a limited physical release of the game, with coming out also in November. Looks like November, but those sold out like almost immediately. So, if you want one, be prepared to pay for it.
Yeah.
It wasn't cheaper than it came out originally either. So. But anyway, so I'm very happy to see these games are you're going to be released pretty soon, because I probably will check them out at some point. I'll probably wait for sale, but I probably am interested in buying them. Yeah. Because spoiler alert, I did like enough of Sparkster what I played that I definitely am curious and spending more time like the other games in the franchise. Yeah. So. Anyway, so we've already so we've all set up here done. We've already talked a little about the we've already talked a little bit about the story and the gameplay of how this goes. Joe, since you have more experience like this franchise than I do you want to go into the gameplay description here for us?
Yeah. So you get your typical health meter. With 3 lives and 5 continues to get through a total of 8 levels. Y is your attack, which can be charged. You'll be doing that a lot. B jumps, and then you have the L and R buttons do roll attacks to the respective direction on the button that you're pushing. Like I said, your charged attack is really going to be the main way that you attack, and you feel overpowered in this game with some of the charge attacks, and you will feel disoriented sometimes because you will bounce around and it gets hectic. But that is Rocket Knight Adventures in general. That being said, the levels are pretty big here. These levels are actually longer than they are on the Genesis, any of the levels that they did on the Genesis games. And, the craziness doesn't stop with just you pinballing everywhere. There's a point where you have a boss battle on a piano. Yes, it's on a piano. There's a shoot 'em up stage that leads to a Rock'em Sock'em Robots boss fight. You did hear that correctly. There are points in this game that remind me of the Goemon series. Goemon is just, it's a great platformer, but it's also very ridiculous, and it's meant to go way over the top. And this game here did the exact same. I don't remember Rocket Knight Adventures 1 or 2 being quite off the wall like this game is, and to be honest, I kind of like it. The level design is such that you can't just, charge your attack and your jetpack and just fly over the entire level. It's designed in such a way that you have to charge the jetpack and you have to be able to go diagonally to get through certain areas, and you're supposed to bounce off the walls to use that as a way to get up and around and all that other stuff. I think the biggest frustration for me was that to see the real ending of this game, much like most Konami games at this time, especially on the Super Nintendo, you have to beat it on the hardest difficulty. So that was kind of disappointing because we all know me. I did not beat this game. And I most certainly did not get very far on normal, never mind on the hardest difficulty. That being said, it's still a fun platformer. I think they executed very well here, and the controls for me felt tight. I felt like any time that I screwed up and I died, that was on me. It wasn't the game. It wasn't the controls. It was because I miscalculated something. And when a game is programmed like that, it feels great. But this is definitely a get good or, you're just going to die.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree with most of what you said because, because like I said before, this is a Konami game. Konami game is going to be at least good, so it's like it may not be great, but at least like if a Konami NES, Super NES, Genesis game, you're going to get like a solid game at the very least. Yep. So, and this one's like no exception to it. So, the whimsical nature and the comical nature of this game is very obvious, and is also, I feel, some of the game's charm.
Yep.
For sure, because it's like, what other game can you play with like an opossum? So,
right.
But
I mean, other than Awesome Possum.
Well, yeah. I heard somebody say once that Konami wanted to make a game that kind of played like Sonic, as far as the actual gameplay and speed went, and that's what they're going for with like the Rocket Knight games. I definitely can see that.
Yeah.
Definitely. There are definitely Sonic vibes here, like playing this game. So, so as Joe mentioned, there are 3 difficulty levels in this game. Well, 3 basic difficulty levels: easy, normal, and hard. Some stages are cut out. You can play the game like an easy. So if you want to see the whole game, you have to do it on normal, and then if you want to see the best ending, you have to play it on hard. Contra 3 on the Super NES works the same way. So there is a 4th crazy hard difficulty mode as well,
of course
too.
There is.
Which you can only access by code. We get the code. I wait to that like the end. But the difference is very, very, very minor as far as the ending goes in that mode. The only difference is that if you beat the game on hard, the game says, "Congratulations, now try it in crazy hard mode." Whereas you beat in crazy hard mode, it just says like congratulations. So that's it. You beat the game on hard, you've seen the true ending basically. So, but yeah. There is, as Joe mentioned, an auto-scrolling level where you're riding this really weird robot ostrich-like thing. Yes. And there's also another stage that's a top-down shooter level where you're riding like something else. So I enjoy this. I enjoy those 2 stages a lot. Those 2 stages have to break up the monotony of some of the side-scrolling platformer stuff that most of the game is. So. There's no power-ups in this game, as many platformers have, which I thought was kind of curious, but I guess that because, as Joe mentioned, you're so powerful.
Already overpowered.
Yeah. You have so many skills. You play really, it's really like not needed. Yeah. So, there are gems you can collect. 100 gems to get a life. That's typical platformer thing. So, there's a health gauge. Thank God there's a health gauge. The health gauge is not like a one-hit thing. So, you can't find extra health. You can't find one-ups. There's an energy gauge also that you need to charge up and whatnot. So
yeah, and the other thing I just want to mention is like the abilities are designed in such a way that you can spam and take advantage of them. Like there is an actual strategy where you can do your mad dash and then you like do the barrel roll thing with L or R, and that transition to that roll, and by the time that rolling animation is done, you are charged back up so that you can do your charge attack again and move to whatever platform or direction that you're going. So they did a good job incorporating, there's no power-ups, but you have the ability to kind of spam and use the moves in such a unique way that it negates the need for the power-ups. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's fine. No, I agree with you definitely. I think it's a very good way of explaining it. So, there is, and also Konami also the gameplay is very similar to Rocket Knight Adventure 1 and 2 on Genesis, but there's one big thing Konami added to this game that I think also adds to the moves you have available to you. That short distance rowing dash attack you have. Yes. You have is new to this game. So having that added to your repertoire, which is already pretty good, is damn amazing.
Yeah.
So I think So the little bit I played of the early, so like I said, I need to spend more time with Genesis games, but I think that so far you just feel stronger and more powerful in this game, thanks to things like that. So,
and also I just want to add one more thing. So the developers for Konami that did the Sparkster games later went on to form Treasure. So if you love Treasure games,
that makes sense. Yeah.
Like you can see, like a prime example is Gunstar Heroes for the Genesis. You can see so many elements from that game in the Rocket Knight Adventure games, and including this Sparkster game. Like you could just see, especially like the goofiness, over the top stuff.
Treasure also did for Konami. Treasure did. Yeah, Treasure also did two of my favorite shoot 'em ups of all time, which is like Gradius 5 and like Nausagi Garuga. So yes, that makes a lot of sense. But yeah. So and as Joe mentioned, the game is hard. However, I think it's a fair difficulty. I think this game is not very cheap at all. I think I think the controls are handled well. They're very responsive. It's like you truly feel like the deaths are like your fault.
Yeah.
And as long as you just put the time in and get better at it, you can eventually like get past that stage. So it's like, I thought this was a very well balanced, well designed platform game as far as difficulty went. It's hard, but not like impossible cheating, because Joe, we've covered numerous platformers on our games on the system where it's like you felt like it was not your fault at all.
Right.
Because of controls or the game setting to whatever. This one is like, yeah, okay, all right, I messed up. I messed up on that. That's my fault.
Yep.
I'm trying to again.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's like again, and it's credit to how good Konami was during this time period. They knew how to program games. They knew how to make they knew how to make the programming very fair and very tough at the same time. So. I got through the game on normal, and that was it. You obviously, so I was not going to try hard. So, not that we use it nowadays, but the game also has the passive feature, which is a very good passive feature, I think. Also, by the way, but he starts you off at that stage.
Yeah.
So it's like that. So back in the day, that really would have helped. Because and as you mentioned, the stages are long, but the game's not super long to play through. Most playthroughs online, the game are ready to go through the game running with like 40 to 60 minutes.
Yeah.
So a little bit longer platformer, but not like a huge time commitment to sit down and play all the way through like we want to. So it is single player only. I do kind of wonder. I think Konami wanted to make sure the game was so good that they wanted to focus on that, and like not include like a multiplayer option or a second player option, which would have been nice, I think. But it's like it's also maybe if that was included, it might have hurt some other part of the game in some way.
Yeah.
So while I do lament the fact it's not there, I also understand it. So. Graphically speaking, this game is gorgeous. Konami once again knew how to make the best system they're programming for, which I think is again, like I said before, a reason why I decided to make a new game and not port a game over, because it takes full advantage of Brainiac's abilities. It's graphically gorgeous. The gameplay is smooth and solid. I didn't run into I counted very minimal slowdown or flicker. The character sprites are big, large, and detailed. It just plays and feels very well in your hands and looks gorgeous.
Yeah.
The music is very good too. It's not like an amazing track, but it's like a very good, solid gameplay music.
Yeah, and that's what I have here in my notes. I was like, the graphics are beautiful, good size, sprites, well detailed, bright and colorful, and then the music is serviceable and sound effects are good as well. So, I mean, It's very hard to not recommend this game because it's, like I said, it's you play it, you get to know it, and you can get through the difficulty parts.
It's like the biggest complaint that I might make about this game, and same complaint that people also made about this game back in the day, like they're reviewing it, is the fact that it's not very. it's not. It's very close. It's very close, like Genesis games. So it's like it's not really. It's hard to recommend playing one over the other because it's like there's not really too much separating them because there is that new mode. There's that new ability that they added to this game and whatnot, and the game does take full advantage of Super Nintendo hardware. But it's like a lot of people complained back then. This is just a carbon copy. Why should I play this? Because it's like, and I think the eBay price we've seen this game may reflect the fact this game may not have sold. Despite how good the game is, it doesn't look like the game sold very well. Perhaps because of that reason.
Yeah, that's a very good possibility. But I have to say, this game's much more beautiful than either of the Genesis games. Genesis games are good for what they are. Yeah. But if you know how to program for the Super Nintendo, you could get some beautiful, crisp graphics, and this game is definitely one of those games. Yeah. So I need to play. Rocket Knight Adventures 1 and 2 more on Genesis to really get a sense of which one I enjoy the most. But it sounds like, Joe, that you enjoyed playing Sparkster more than you played personally for you more than Rocket Knight Adventures. So visually, yes. As far as it as a game, I think all three games are pretty similar, and you can't really argue the gameplay aspect on any of those. But visually, yes, I like the Super Nintendo version a bit more.
Yeah. But okay, so I think we've covered the major points about this game. Platformers tend to make for short episodes, anyway. So, this is definitely a fun game. It's definitely a very good style game. I think if people have not played it already, they should definitely check it out, especially if they're a fan of platformer games. The collection coming out next month is a great chance to be able to get the game. A great chance to be able to get the games. I think it's just on Switch. I didn't check to see if the collection was coming out for anything else, but because I've only seen the only I've seen for it is on the Switch. So, but anyway, yeah. So it definitely is a good solid platformer. Especially if you're a fan of a Konami games. As I said before, Konami really did not do any wrong during this time period, I think. So it's this is a very solid, maybe a little bit underrated, I might dare say, platformer game for the system. Yeah. So, like I said before, I need to spend more time playing Genesis ones. But when Joe said it's it's pretty much just this game holds itself apart enough from those other games as well. That's worth playing. So. So if anybody's not played the game because they thought it was just a cheap Genesis ripoff, I definitely encourage you to check the game out for sure. But do you have anything you want to say about the game as a wrap-up thought, Joe, before we move on?
So kind of just touching on what you had said about possible low sales for this game. I think probably going into it, Konami had every reason to put it over on the Super Nintendo. They probably saw that they, graphically they could do it. They could make it something a bit different and make it its own thing. And they probably thought running two franchises at the same time with the same character was probably going to be the way to do it and make some money. And I think because Rocket Knight Adventures only came out on the Genesis, that when they did put Sparkster on the Super Nintendo, I think there was that misconception of, it's just a port, for one.
Yeah.
And two, that fan base owns the Sega. They don't own the Nintendo. So that fan base isn't technically, it's not like it is today where you can own a PS5 and an Xbox Series X and it's all good. Back then, you had to be choosy about what system you had, and then you were kind of stuck with it. And it was rare that you were able to transition over and have that other system. So I think it was a good play on them to be able to bring it over to the Super Nintendo. I just think it was a no-win situation either way, unfortunately.
Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, because again, this game. like I said before, this game is very close to Rocket Knight Adventures 2, Sparksters, on Genesis. It's not a direct sequel like that game is, but it's like I think. It's like I agree with you. I don't blame Konami for wanting to bring the game over to Super NES because Super NES definitely had a very large market as well too. But it's like the fan base was definitely like not there. So maybe Konami didn't push the game very much very much the platform either. It's like I don't know how much I did not do a deep dive into this, but maybe they didn't advertise the game like very heavily either. So
yeah, that's possible.
But anyway, so yeah, like I said before, which is a shame because I think that all three of these games are very good, like for their own reasons. So it's like I definitely think that I'm happy to see that a collection of the games is finally coming out next month, because it's like for a long time it didn't look like that was going to happen. Yeah. It's like like I said, we got that. Like I said, we got that rebirth in 2010, like of Rocket Knight, and then pretty much that's been it since then. So like the collection coming out hopefully will sell well, and maybe something else will happen because of that.
Yeah, I mean, fingers crossed. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, but. So anyway, I did mention before. I did mention before that there was a crazy hard mode you could access this game, the highest difficult setting. It does use a code. It's not the Konami code, but it's clearly inspired by the Konami code, because the code for this is left, right, down, up, AX. So. Actually, I'm sorry. It's left, right, down, up, AX. So definitely a play off the old Konami code. Yeah. So even if the classic code's not used here, you can tell they definitely were inspired by it. The Japanese version of the game only, by the way, also has the sound mode setting as well. Oh, okay. So I did mention the fact this game was expensive on eBay. I guess the reasons for this is probably a combination of low sales back in the day, combined with high demand. I think these prices very well may drop once the collection comes out next month, because like I said before, currently there's no legal way to buy the games. I think maybe once the collection becomes available, a lot of folks may buy that instead, and that may drop the pricing on the Super NES side of things as far as the car prices go, because right now this is definitely one of the more expensive Super NES games. I didn't see any repros of this game being sold, which the criteria I use would be like going from uncommon to rare, right, where people actually make make time and hassle to make repos of a game. But definitely something that you want for your collection. You're going to have to pony out some money for, especially if you want the game for CIB, because those are really expensive. So the game can be found on eBay. There's 17 copies of this game listed when I was doing research. 13 copies of the game, and sold recently, so it is on there. Like I said before, you just got to be prepared to pay a little bit more than your average Super NES game for it. These prices include shipping. Car prices of the game sold anywhere from $53 to $195, depending upon the condition and whatnot. Yeah, definitely pricier. And if you want CIB, those sold anywhere from $400 and $600. So this is definitely it's definitely a more uncommon, expensive game to get the system. So again, my best guess is a combination of low sales about high demand for it. Right. I mean, because it is a Konami game, it is part of a franchise that people have a lot of affection for. So I'll be curious to see. Remind me, Joe, take a look at this again in a few months to see if the collection had any kind of influence as far as the pricing. And I wish I had remembered. I did not look up pricing of the Genesis games. I wish I had, because I'm curious to see if they were expensive. Probably not, I'm thinking, but. I think because I know Rocket Knight Adventures sold very well. I'm not sure about the sequel, but I gotta imagine those games are cheaper.
Rocket Knight Adventures, the first game. Looks like loose cartridge, $35. Complete in box, you're looking at $80.
Okay, pricey, but not as bad.
Correct. That's actually not bad, especially considering it's a pretty beloved game.
Yeah. Well, back in the day, the game magazines gave the game pretty positive marks. GamePro gave it like a 4 out of 5. EGM gave it like 8.2 out of 10. Power Limited gave like 76%. So like, the aggravator game ranking for the game runs about like a 78%, which is like a high C, which I think is like a fair grade. The game actually shows up. Sparkster also shows up on some top 100 game lists as well too for the system as well. So there are definitely people out there who really think very highly of this game.
So Sparkster 2, I do not think sold very well. For one, I'm not finding a lot of American sold copies, a lot of imports, which are over $400. And the 2 American ones I see are $300 and $550. And those are all complete in box. There is no cart only.
So it's about on par with the Sparkster prices.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Nope, that's complete in box, $234. Here we go. Cartridge on its own, $134.99.
Okay.
So
that is. But
yep.
Again, the collection should drop those prices down some, I think, because
I would think so, because I'm thinking like these are locked on the Genesis, and that's probably exactly why they are where they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Genesis pricing doesn't. With exceptions, Genesis pricing does not seem to experience the same price bubble that Super NES games did over the last several years.
Correct.
I mean, of course, there are exceptions. Rare games are going to be expensive regardless, but I think I've not seen Genesis prices go as high as Super NES prices did over the. They did over the last like 5 years.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's like why that is, I don't know. But because Genesis sold almost as well as Super NES did during their lifespan. Yeah. There's just there's so many games for it as it did Super NES. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. It's curious. It'd be interesting to do some research on that at some point, I think. But
yeah, it's like why is PS2 and GameCube like super valuable? A lot of those games are very expensive, but yet you can get the same title on Xbox, the original Xbox, and for pennies. Like the only rare Xbox game is Steel Battalion, and that's because it comes with the whole giant rig, and nobody kept the box and all that other stuff. You know what I mean? But like outside of that, like as far as rare titles go, like you're lucky.
I saw that. I saw that controller once being still used at a GameStop, and I'm like, damn, that's tempting, but it's like, I don't have the room for it.
It's a beast.
I've seen it. I've not played it myself. Nor has anybody I know personally played it, but I have seen videos. The videos have been in action, and it looks like a beast. Yeah. I mean, it looks fun as heck. Don't get me wrong, right. But it definitely looks like, those glorified gimmicky controllers are going to sell so rarely. Yep. So, but actually, there are there are a few Genesis games like Crusaders of Cantry that go for like pretty high prices, but I think across the board, Super NES pricing is still a bit cheaper. Yeah, but. Anyway, though, so fun game. Like I said, I'm glad this came up because, like I said, I hoped going into this game, being a Konami game, and I was not disappointed. So I'm glad we got the chance to play the podcast. I'm sure there's Konami game which we've not covered for the podcast yet. So I know a big one coming up pretty soon for. Pretty soon for an episode. We're gonna have a guest host. The guest host for. We're gonna be covering Legend of Mystical Ninja pretty soon, which is also a Konami game. So, but beyond that, I'm trying to think of some Konami games we've covered yet. I can't think of too many. So
it's kind of ironic that we're going to be covering that soon. I totally forgot about that because I even mentioned Goemon.
Yeah, that basically is a reskin Goemon game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about talk about like a very Japanese game.
Oh, yeah.
Oof, that one. But
That'd be fun.
Yeah, we'll get into the whole history and whatnot like when we cover that. So, because there are sequels which most people probably never played because they never came out here in the West, but at least not officially. But yeah. So yeah, that's coming up pretty soon. But anyway, our next episode is not that. Our next episode is a game I saw. I saw somebody doing on Twitch recently in a retro game roundup, and that looked pretty interesting. We're gonna be covering a game called King Arthur's Adventures for the Super NES. The next episode. Did I get that name right? I think King Arthur's World is the actual name of the game. It's very Teflon, non-sticky, very generic name for sure. But that should be fun too because I always enjoy playing these like weird games that did not get much attention on the system like when they came out. So
I've never even heard of this game.
There are many games in the system that nobody ever heard of because, like I said, there's so many games in the system that a lot of them just fell through the cracks.
Yeah.
The cracks. Some of the games are much. Some of the games are much beloved these days. I.e. Earthbound.
Right.
Other games are stay ignored for good reason. So, but anyway, so yeah. Sparkster and then the games, the franchise too, definitely worth playing. So, so I think that pretty much wraps this up for this episode. As always, we appreciate you listening to us. If you have any comments, feedback, suggestions, feel free to leave us a comment in our Facebook group. Or you can also send me an email directly to the SNES Podcast at yahoo.com. Joe, where can they reach you at?
You can find me in my public Facebook, Joe Copel. You can find me. Also, I have X at JOESUX30. And then, of course, I do my Radical Retro Roundup podcast, which has its own Facebook page. So I invite you to go there. I just published a episode with George where we covered the 30-year retrospect of Weezer the Blue Album. Actually, just dropped this morning. So, yeah, definitely check that out. It was a fun episode to do. And we sing a little bit, and I caught George where I got him to sing, and I already stopped recording. And he had not, so that was some good little banter that I put at the beginning of the episode. So it kind of sounds like a Radical Retro Roundup episode, but it's not. It's its own thing. Just a fun side project I'm doing.
Sure, right. But alrighty, folks. As always, thank you very much for listening. We appreciate it. Stay safe, everybody. Be well. We'll catch you again next time.
Bye.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man.
Now you're playing with power. Super power.